The sea remembers what men forget. Beneath its restless waves lie not only the bones of ships, but the echoes of entire civilizations, swallowed whole by waters too vast to tame. To begin this journey, imagine the silence of a Mediterranean harbor at dawn. The air smells of salt and tar. Wooden hulls creak against the tide. From a distance, masts rise like forests, each sail painted with emblems of power, each vessel carrying the pride of an empire. And yet, centuries later, only fragments remain. A bronze ram encrusted with coral, an amphora buried in silt, a warship reduced to memory. The first whispers of naval grandeur rise from the Bronze Age. Around 1200 BCE, a confederation of seafaring raiders known only through Egyptian records as the Sea Peoples descended upon the great kingdoms of the eastern Mediterranean. They came with fleets of sleek vessels, faster and more agile than the lumbering transports of their enemies. On temple walls in Egypt, their ships are etched in stone. High prows curving upward like talons, sails taut with wind, oars dipping in unison. Who were they? Pirates, mercenaries, exiles from sunken homelands? No one knows. But what is certain is that they brought ruin. Whole navies, from Cyprus to Ugarit, vanished beneath their relentless tide. The very networks of trade and empire were broken, as if the sea itself had turned against civilization. A Greek poet centuries later would write, "The sea gives, the sea takes away. And in its taking, it keeps what it desires." Perhaps he knew that fleets are not only weapons of war but symbols of human ambition. When they collapse, they do not simply sink, they drag worlds with them. In Athens, during the height of the classical age, naval power was more than military strength, it was the lifeblood of democracy. The mighty triremes of Athens, with their 3 tiers of oarsmen, thundered across the Aegean like arrows loosed from the bow of the gods. Their bronze rams splintered Persian ships at Salamis, securing not only a victory but the survival of an entire civilization's idea of freedom. Yet even Athens' shining fleet, unmatched in its day, could not escape decay. Wood rotted, wealth dwindled, rival powers rose. By the time Macedon swept across Greece, the once unstoppable triremes were little more than relics. Broken keels rested in forgotten shipyards, their timbers scavenged for firewood. The sea had demanded its due once more. History does not preserve the sound of oars striking water, or the cries of sailors as their decks stilt beneath them. But it does preserve whispers in ink, in the crumbling libraries of Alexandria, in the brittle scrolls of forgotten chroniclers. There are records of storms that scattered armadas of fleets vanishing overnight, of captains who stared into the horizon as though the ocean itself had betrayed them. These accounts speak less of battles lost and more of mysteries unsolved. How could entire forces vanish, their ships never to be found? Did they founder in storms? Were they destroyed in battle? Or perhaps most unsettling of all, did they drift into silence, abandoned, their fate unwritten? Consider Carthage, a city whose lifeblood was the sea, whose merchant fleets carried wealth across the known world, whose war galleys rivaled even Rome's. For centuries, its naval power was legend, but legend is fragile. At the end of the Third Punic War, Carthage's fleet, once counted in the hundreds, was ordered to be burned by the Romans. Imagine it, the night sky lit orange, the sea black with smoke, the cries of sailors mingling with the roar of flames. Ships that had ruled the Mediterranean for generations were reduced to ash in a single act of deliberate erasure. The sea did not take them this time. Man did. But still, the effect was the same. Silence where once there had been thunder. And yet, for all these tales of destruction, one truth lingers beneath them. Fleets are not only military constructs. They are mirrors of human societies, of their ambitions, their fears, their fragile hopes. To trace the rise and fall of the world's greatest navies is to trace the rise and fall of civilizations themselves. When the fleets collapse, so too do the empires that built them. and what remains are only fragments, oars buried in sand, anchors rusted to stone, memories half-remembered in the lullaby of the sea. But these fragments, these shadows, is only the beginning. For scattered across history's tides are far darker accounts, armadas shattered not only by storms or enemies but by forces older, stranger, and more elusive. Some say curses traveled with fleets, stitched into their sails. Others speak of patterns, mysterious rhythms of history in which naval power always seems to rise, only to collapse with eerie precision, as if obeying some law written not on earth, but in the stars. The sea does not explain itself, it only waits. And as we step deeper into these waters, we will find that what collapsed was not merely wood and sail, but something larger, something still unsettled in the human heart. But this was only the first shadow of what history has yet to tell. The sea is not empty, it is an archive without shelves. To walk deeper into its mysteries is to open doors that were never meant to be found. Some creak open with the voice of old chronicles. Others remain sealed, whispering through wrecks scattered across the ocean floor. One such door lies in the Chronicles of Rome. When the Republic turned its gaze to the Mediterranean, it faced Carthage not just on land, but upon the waters. The Romans, land-born and awkward at sea, built a fleet almost overnight. Yet hubris invites catastrophe. Into 55 BCE, a storm overtook the Roman Armada as it returned from Africa. Ancient writers record the loss of more than 270 ships and over 100,000 men, an annihilation so vast it is hard to fathom. Imagine the black horizon, filled with sails moments before lightning split the skies. Then chaos, oars snapped like twigs, hulls torn open, the screams of thousands swallowed by thunder. The greatest fleet Rome had ever assembled was gone in a single night, as if the gods themselves had brushed it from the sea. The Romans would build again and lose again, until at last they prevailed. But the pattern was written: empires may master the sea, but never control it. Every fleet, no matter how mighty, carries within it the seed of collapse. Centuries later, on the misty waters of northern Europe, another fleet would meet its fate. The Spanish Armada, called the Invincible Fleet, was a floating city of more than 100 ships, tasked with bringing England to its knees. Chroniclers describe the sight of it: sails billowing white against the gray sky, banners of the cross flaring in the wind, the sound of drums echoing like a heartbeat of conquest. Yet invincibility is an illusion. English fire ships scattered the Armada, storms tore it apart, and by the time survivors limped home, half the fleet was lost. It was not only ships that sank, but an age, the dream of Spanish world dominion, faded with the wreckage strewn across foreign shores. But what remains most haunting is not the battles nor the storms, but the silence of the forgotten fleets. Off the coast of Japan lies the story of the Mongol Armada's Kublai Khan's attempt to conquer an island he believed destined for his empire. Twice he sent fleets of hundreds of ships. Twice they were dashed by typhoons so fierce the Japanese named them kamikaze, the divine winds. For centuries, they were remembered only as legend. Then divers uncovered timbers buried in the seabed, anchors lying in silt, weapons encrusted with coral. The evidence was undeniable. The fleets had existed, and they had perished not in glorious combat, but in the jaws of nature itself. The ocean had been the true defender of Japan. And yet, within these collapses, there is a strange rhythm, a pulse older than politics. Consider how often the greatest fleets fall not to enemy fire, but to something beyond human command. Storms, winds, invisible currents of fate, patterns that repeat like tides. A Chinese proverb tells us, the water that bears the boat is the same that swallows it. To build a fleet is to bargain with a power one cannot tame. Still, it is not only nature that erases fleets. Sometimes history itself conspires to forget them. Off the coast of Turkey, in the Bay of Salamis, archaeologists have searched for centuries for traces of the Persian fleet that clashed with Athens. Only fragments have been found: anchors without ships, timbers without context. The rest is silence. Did the sea take them? Were they scavenged, dismantled, erased? No one knows. In the end, the victor's memory endured, the loser's fleet dissolved into obscurity. History, like the ocean, keeps what it desires. But even where memory fails, there are patterns hidden in plain sight. The rise of naval power always signals the height of empire. The collapse of fleets always signals decline. It is as if the ocean itself marks the measure of civilizations, permitting them to rule only so long as they respect its boundaries, and when they overreach, it answers with storms, fire, and silence. One might even wonder, are fleets merely wood and sail, or are they offerings cast upon the altar of the sea, destined to be taken back in time? These mysteries leave us restless. For every shipwreck found, 10 more lie hidden. For every chronicle written, countless stories remain untold. We hold only fragments: rusted nails, shattered amphorae, brittle scrolls that crumble at the touch. And yet from these fragments, patterns emerge. The sea does not reveal everything at once. It reveals in echoes, in scattered bones, in the faint imprint of a hull upon the seabed. And so the trail leads us further still. Beyond the storms and the battles, beyond the collapses recorded in ink, lies something older. Some say the sea holds within it a law that no empire can break, a rhythm that has always governed the rise and fall of fleets. To glimpse something vast, something that binds past to present, something that whispers still across the waters. And still, the trail led further into a darkness older than the empire itself. The deeper we move into history's tides, the more the water grows heavy with silence. Fleets that once shook the world now sleep beneath the waves, their timbers softened by centuries, their sails dissolved into nothing. And yet, if you listen closely, you can still hear them: whispers of oars, a crack of canvas, the echo of voices that no longer belong to the living. The final stories are the heaviest, for they carry not only the weight of ships and empires, but the sorrow of remembrance. In 1281, when Kublai Khan's armada was shattered by the second divine wind, chronicles tell us the beaches of Kyushu were choked with wreckage. The sea was not simply a destroyer. It became a grave. Entire armies, thousands of men who never set foot upon the land they sought to conquer, disappeared into the depths. To the Japanese, it was divine deliverance. To the Mongols, it was an erasure so complete that even their empire, mighty, unrelenting, seemingly eternal, would begin to fracture soon after. The sea had decided. Centuries later, in another corner of the world, an empire drunk on power would learn the same truth. Napoleon, seeking to bend nations to his will, sent his fleet to Abukir Bay in 1798. There, under the burning Egyptian sun, the French ships lay anchored in what seemed like safety. But the night brought fire. The British descended, their guns thundered, and in the chaos the French flagship El Orient exploded with such force that the sky itself seemed torn apart. Eyewitnesses wrote that the sea glowed red, and for a moment night became day. The wreckage burned until dawn, and with it the dream of French mastery of the Mediterranean was consumed. The fall of a fleet had become the fall of an imperial vision, and still the pattern returned. In 1905, on the other side of the world, the Russian fleet sailed across half the globe to meet Japan in the Tsushima Strait. They came weary, their ships fouled by months at sea, but confident in numbers. What followed was annihilation. The Japanese guns tore them apart in hours, and nearly the entire Russian fleet was sunk or captured. The empire of the Tsars had been humiliated, and the shockwaves of that defeat rippled through history, weakening the throne, stirring the unrest that would ignite in revolution. The collapse of a fleet had once again been the collapse of a world. Why does the fall of a navy carry such weight? Perhaps because fleets are more than war machines. They are floating cities, embodiments of a nation's wealth, knowledge, and ambition. To see them sink is to see centuries of effort reduced to silence in a single day. And in that silence, humanity is forced to face the truth. Nothing we build, no matter how grand, escapes the tides. But beneath the chronicles and ruins, there lingers something deeper still. A pattern too vast to ignore. Fleets rise with empires and sink with them, as if tethered by an unseen law. Some scholars dismiss this as coincidence, others as mere economics. Yet when you trace the line from the sea peoples to Athens, from Carthage to Spain, from Mongol armadas to Tsushima, the rhythm is unmistakable. It is as if the sea itself keeps a ledger, granting empires their moment, then reclaiming its due with storms, with fire, with silence. And so we are left with a question that has no certain answer. Is history itself written upon the waters? Are the oceans not merely witnesses, but participants in the rise and fall of civilizations? Ancient poets often spoke of the sea as a god, capricious and eternal. Modern science strips away the myth, yet the pattern remains. We cannot escape it. Perhaps this is why the wrecks haunt us so. Divers descend into the deep and find anchors buried in sand, amphorae still cradling the last drops of ancient wine, skeletons of ships, standing like cathedrals in the dark. They are more than ruins. They are reminders. Each sunken fleet is a mirror, showing us not only what has been lost, but what is always at risk of being lost again. And as we reflect, the past does not close like a book. It remains open, restless, asking us to listen. What fleets of our own age, vast and proud, will one day lie silent on the seabed? Which empires, confident in their invincibility, will be humbled by the same waters that swallowed their predecessors? The sea gives no answers. It only waits. Perhaps the truth is this: the past is not behind us at all. It is around us, in the tides, in the storms, in the wrecks hidden just out of sight. The collapse of fleets is not just history, it is a pattern we still live within, a shadow that stretches across centuries. And so we leave this story as we began, not with closure, but with an open door. Which truths do you think history has yet to reveal? Share your thoughts. The conversation is part of the discovery. Until the next story finds us. Keep listening for the footsteps of the past.